Former United States Senator Al Franken is here to discuss the state of American politics, election recounts, and why everyone seems to hate Ted Cruz. This is Defending Democracy, a weekly podcast from Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias. Let's get started. Welcome, Al Franken, to Defending Democracy.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So, Al, I wonder if you remember the very first time that you and I met.
Yes. I was a candidate for the Senate, and I was in Washington, D.C. to learn some stuff. And you were one of the guys I learned stuff from. And you were funny.
You said I was very funny.
Yes.
When you tell this story, you always leave out the very.
No,
and I hang on the very.
No, I said, actually here, I said, and you were funny. But I didn't say, I said you were funny. I said you were very funny. We always had this argument about this. But no, you were very funny. And
I always tell you that was the greatest compliment I ever received. In fact, I told you this at the time. It's like the best compliment I'd ever gotten.
That's right. And I thought that was so sad. Oh my God, this poor guy. But then I got to know you better, and I didn't feel sorry for you anymore.
So you have had what is really the most amazing career. It's part of why I love you and why so many people want to hear from you. You have been an award-winning writer and actor on Saturday Night Live.
I'm not an award-winning actor.
An accomplished actor.
I'm not an accomplished actor.
a New York Times bestselling author.
That's right. That's true.
A United States Senator.
Yeah.
A world-renowned comic and political commentator.
Well, I'm not sure how international I am, but okay.
All right. So here's my question. So
Yes.
You are a kid growing up in Minnesota.
Right.
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 Like, which of these things did you think you were going to be?
I think the first thing I thought I was going to be was a scientist. And that's because when I was 6 years old, the Russians put up Sputnik, and everybody was terrified because the Russians, or the Soviets, were now ahead of us in space, and they had nuclear weapons. And my parents marched me and my brother into the living room and said, "You boys are going to study math and science so we can beat the Soviets." And I thought that was a lot of pressure to put on a 6-year-old, but I really took that seriously. And my brother, neither of my parents went to college. My dad didn't graduate high school, but they're very serious about our education. And my brother ended up going to MIT and majoring in physics and became a photographer. And I went to a really good school, and
You went to Harvard.
I went to Harvard. It's a very good school. I can prove it. But anyway, I went there, and I thought when I did very well, I tested very well in science and in math, but I found out that I didn't enjoy it once I actually was at college, and I had a crisis. And Franny, who you know, I had met her freshman year. She suggested I go to the counselors, and because I had a crisis, and they gave me this Minnesota multiphasic test, a personality test to see what you would, and they have a test to see what career you'd be good at. And so you answer 505 questions, yes or no, and they come up with a diagnosis, and they said that I should be either a camp counselor was number one, or a jazz musician. And the only thing is, I had never been to a sleepaway camp, and I didn't play an instrument. But I thought that said, that means comedian. Because I'd been doing comedy. I had been doing comedy since I was a little kid. And I did it in high school with Tom Davis. I don't know if you remember Franken and Davis from SNL.
I do.
And so he and I started performing together in high school at assembly. We would do ads, like do a little commercial for if the chess club was having a a meeting, we would get up there and do something about chess. And so anyway, that's how we started. And we went out. I went to Harvard. Tom wasn't a great student, but he joined me out there, and then we traveled out to LA, where we did the Comedy Store, and we got spotted by a William Morris agent who said he really liked our writing and that we should put a package together for a show that we'd like to be on. And all the shows at the time were like, it was the Carson Show, which we weren't right for. It's a great show. The Carol Burnett Show, which is a great show, but we were not right for that. Sonny and Cher was a show that wasn't very good. But so he said, write for something you'd like to be, like to see. So we wrote a package that had a newscast, commercial parody, a conceptual film, and a sketch. And we were the only writers who Lorne hired who he didn't meet. He did it simply on our package.
And that was Saturday Night Live.
And that was Saturday Night Live. I'm sorry if I buried the lead. That was SNL. And that was in 1975. And so I was 2 years out of college, and Tom was out of 5 years out of high school.
And you had been, up until going to Harvard, which is in Cambridge outside of Boston, you had grown up in Minnesota.
I grew up in Minnesota. I moved there from New Jersey when I was 4. We went to a town in southern Minnesota, Albert Lee. It's a kind of a small city, and we moved in the middle of winter, and it was so cold, and I just remember not liking it until I got to meet other kids, and then I started liking it. And we lived there for a couple of years. My dad had a quilting factory that failed, and so then we moved up to Minneapolis and the suburbs, St. Louis Park, which is kind of the Jewish suburb. And
isn't there a Brooklyn Park also?
There's a Brooklyn Park, which isn't a Jewish
right,
suburb.
But it's odd that there is a St. Louis Park and a Brooklyn Park.
Yep. And St. Louis Park is why St. Louis Park, and the St. Louis Railroad went through St. Louis Park or something. And Brooklyn Park, who knows? I don't know why, but yes.
You obviously developed an enormous talent for comedy there. And
well, okay.
Okay. I in my opinion, you did.
Okay. Thank you.
In my opinion, you did.
That's very
kind.
In
my opinion, you did. And okay. And I'm curious, because then you come to
You're
New York
just
City.
hanging on that because I said you were very funny.
that is true.
You're giving me bona fides for your right. Bona fides. So okay, fine. I had an enormous talent.
Right.
Fine. And could recognize talent like you.
So then you come to New York City. I'm from New York originally, and was growing up outside of New York City at that time. And what's interesting is that, I associate a certain comedic sensibility to New York, which, of course, you think of Seinfeld, you think of Saturday Night Live as sort of quintessentially, David Letterman as sort of quintessentially like New York comedy. But you pointed out, we were chatting about this earlier, that actually there is a non-New York provenance to a lot of it.
Well, Lorne again is from Toronto, and there were a lot of kind of second city types, and Lorraine Newman was from the Groundlings, and Jane Curtin was from Boston. And so we actually didn't, but we were in New York, and we got a New York sensibility, I think, from just living there.
So now when you travel around the country and, do comedy or see comedy or critique it, is there a difference between what an audience in New York finds funny versus what an audience in, say, Chicago or Minneapolis or St. Louis?
Not really. We have an American sensibility, I'd say. Huh. And my brother married into a Dutch family, and boy, they don't have a sense of humor. No,
You may have just
we're
offended the
Americans.
Dutch. The Dutch audience is now unhappy with us. I hope you're.
Yeah, I know. Okay, we're gonna lose the Dutch. Good
Who
riddance,
has the
Dutch.
Who has the best sense of humor?
Who are the best sense? You mean by location?
I don't
I mean,
know. Like, where
uh,
do you like college? Is it college campuses? Is it
oh,
like,
no,
is it
no.
clubs? Is it like big arenas? Is it a part of the country? Like
Well, theaters. I like theaters
theaters.
because I can't fill a big arena, so I like theaters. I like 500 seat theaters. That's the best audience because that's what I can fill up.
So, you grew up in Minnesota, and you
Want to know what
know,
St. Louis Park was called? It was called St. Jewish Park because we were 20% Jewish.
and that
And
was
in Minnesota, that's a lot of Jews. In Minnesota, any Jews is a lot of Jews. In fact, that was our license plate until
lot,
1969.
yeah, a lot of Jews.
Any Jews is a lot of Jews.
Any Jews is a lot of Jews. All right. So here's what I knew about Minnesota growing up. Ready? Bob Dylan was from Hibbing.
That's correct.
Well, is there someone else from Hibbing?
Kevin McHale,
Huh.
the basketball player for the Celtics.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you been there? Is it like a shrine to Bob Dylan when you go there?
No, it isn't. I've gone there. I've gone there a lot. If you're a politician in Minnesota, you go to the Iron Range, and Hibbing is in the middle of the Iron Range. The Iron Range is where iron ore is mined, and it has a particular character of its own, and it's very important politically.
You go to New York. You are successful, entertainer. And you at some point you decide you're going to take on right-wing media.
Yes.
Tell me how you decided to do that, because honestly, by today's standards, everyone is like, Fox is terrible, we have all this misinformation. You were literally decades ahead of the game here.
Well, what happened was I did 15 seasons at SNL. I did the first 5 seasons, then I left for 5, then I came back and did 10 more years. Then in 1995, Kevin Nealon, who'd been doing Update, was leaving, and I wanted to do Weekend Update. And there was an audition for it, and it was between me and Norm Macdonald, and Norm got it. And Norm, I thought, was great. And yeah, really great. So, and then I said, well, I'm going to leave the show after all these years here. And then I decided to write a book, and it was Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot and Other Observations. And that was more about actually, Fox didn't start until 96.
Okay.
So,
what year is this? What year is
this is 94, 95. And basically, what happened is Rush Limbaugh had this audience of like 20 million people a week, and he was. I listened to him, and I couldn't believe this guy because he was lying all the time, and also lying in really obvious ways that if you were kind of paying any attention, you knew he was lying. But it didn't seem to matter. And I mean, he had a TV show too. I remember, in 92, when Bush was running, HW was running for re-election against Clinton, he went on this thing. He said this thing that Bill Clinton had, while he was a student at Oxford, had organized a protest against the Vietnam War. And I just think you can't do that where you're on foreign soil and you're disloyal to this country, and that's a scandal, blah, blah, blah. And then for some reason, Bush took a lot of crap for that, and because he was accusing him of being, I don't know. But Limbaugh went, he didn't accuse him of that at all. Here, let me play it. Let me play a clip from it. And he plays a clip from what HW had said that just doesn't have that part of his speech in it. You see, he didn't say that. And so I was wow, who is this guy? And so I started to listen to his show, and I couldn't believe it. And so I said, okay, I got to write a book on this guy. And it was really him and Gingrich that I was kind of focusing on. Gingrich was the second lead in the book, and Gingrich, I think, is responsible a lot for the tone of the Republican Party. I got the book back, and here's the book, and Gingrich had put out a list of words that you could use to talk like Newt.
No shit.
Yes, and they were contrasting words that talk about Democrats: decay, failure, radical, devour, destructive, pathetic, corruption, anti-flag, anti-family, anti-child, anti-jobs. This was, if it wasn't for Gingrich, I don't think there'd be a Trump. And if
really?
it wasn't for Rush either.
Huh. Do you think without Rush, there's no Fox News?
No, I think that they would have figured it out without him. But Rush invented also kind of minor league rushes all over the country.
Yeah.
You go to any country and you turn on the AM radio.
And Sean Hannity was one, right? Didn't Sean Hannity begin as kind of like a Rush wannabe?
Yeah. And he just hung in there. I don't think he's as talented as Rush was. Rush was very talented. And but Hannity is just, oh God, he's awful. He's just awful. He's despicable.
Okay, so at what point did you figure out that Fox News was going to be what Fox News is?
It didn't take long. I basically started when I started looking at O'Reilly, and this again had the same pattern of saying stuff that just wasn't true, and the same kind of tabloid feel to it that that CNN or MSNBC don't quite have.
So you wrote that book, and that book was even bigger seller than the first one.
That's right. We kept track of what I sold. Lies and the Lying Liars Who Tell Them a Fair and Balanced Look at the Right. I wrote that while I was what was I called? I was called something at the Kennedy School at Harvard. I was I didn't teach anything.
A distinguished scholar.
I'd like to think
I took a shot, I'm taking a shot here.
That was very good. That was close to it. I wasn't even that. But anyway, so I did, and I had students, and these students helped me write. And one of them was Ben Wickler.
Really?
Yeah.
The guy who's now the chair of the
who's the great chair of the Wisconsin Party.
Wisconsin Democratic Party.
Yeah, and a very, very talented writer and very funny guy, believe it or not. He's in a very serious business now, making sure Tammy wins and other races in that state go well, including the presidential. It's going to be close. Did you see? I saw something this past weekend. Ezra Klein wrote this about Nate Silver. Nate Silver wrote that in the 7 battleground states, they're all within 2 points, and that Kamala was ahead in 4 of them, and Trump was ahead in 3 of them, and that the most likely outcome in the election was that Kamala would win all 7, and the second most likely in the election was that Trump would win all 7. Isn't that great? And that's because most likely they're off. They're off by something. Hillary won by 3 points, but was ahead by like 6, right?
Yep, that's right. And Biden was ahead also by more in 2020 than he
by like 7, and he won by like 4 or something. So and so the polling there's no guarantee that this polling is accurate or isn't off by a certain percentage one way or the other.
So you may be the nation's leading expert on being a candidate in a very close election.
And
because
you might be the expert on doing being the lawyer for the recount on a very close election.
yes, I was, for those of you who don't know, I was Al's recount lawyer in the 2008 recount between him and Norm Coleman, which was the largest and longest recount and contest in American history up till that point.
And you know what really helped? What really helped was how funny you were.
And do you remember if going into that race, the polls, like, were the polls right? I don't have any recollection. Were the polls
You mean
right,
going into the final night?
yeah, like what
or
you're
final
saying now,
election
like
day?
where like the polls can be off a little
Yeah,
one way or
they
the
were
other.
actually really close at that
Is that
time.
right?
Yeah. So they were right. And it was, you know, I was down by like 700
Yep.
the next day.
Yep.
And Norm declared himself the winner. And we said, not so fast.
Yeah, I think he
And
said it's something like it's time for healing or something.
I might have said it's time for healing as a joke,
Yes.
but because I didn't like Norm.
No, not you said. I think he said it was time for
he
you to
said it was a
concede.
time for healing.
He said it was time for you to that you should concede. And that
That's right. Okay.
It was time for all Minnesotans to come together, and it was time for healing.
Because I won by 700 votes.
Right, exactly.
And we said, not so fast. We're going to do a recount. And I won the recount in time to be seated with the rest of my colleagues.
It's
right?
true. Yep.
And you remember that part of the process was that we had everybody check. We recounted by hand all the ballots, and you sent our people to sit at every table and challenge what should be challenged and not challenge what shouldn't be challenged. And we counted every ballot in the state. And at the end of that, we won the first time. They recounted by what, 50 some?
Yes, I'm in that ballpark. Yeah.
But you, because of good lawyering, had gotten more ballots admitted.
Correct.
And now, having won by 53, if you hadn't done that, I would have won by 53.
That is true. And you would have been seated on time.
Not really. No, because he would have challenged that, I think. But yeah. What happened was we opened new ballots, and you were afraid if I went below zero again that I'd lose. But I got more votes.
Yes, and we wound up winning by over 300 votes.
312.
Yeah.
Not that I remember it.
Yeah, and it has been a benchmark that, as we look to see what happened in 2020 and now prepare for 2024, it remains in many respects the sort of the prototype of the modern post-election, right? I mean, so many things that now people talk about as being normal, part of the process, curing ballots, for example, was something that really was innovated as part of that post-election.
I know that you're people on your podcast know what curing ballots is, but why don't you explain it?
Yeah, so the fact is that a small but persistent number of people who vote by mail make some type of error in the way in which they return their ballot. Right now, the biggest one that people talk about out of Pennsylvania is the so-called naked ballots, where they don't put the ballot in an inner envelope and the security envelope and put it in the sleeve. Or in Pennsylvania, there's been litigation over undated ballots. This is where they return the ballots and they don't date their signature. And so now we're all used to this kind of thing being litigated, and a process by which voters who make these errors get contacted and can go in and fix that thing. So if they forgot to sign, they can go in and sign, or if they didn't date, they can go in and date.
That's curing the ballot.
That's called curing the ballot. And Republicans now litigate to prevent curing ballots.
I remember the one case you lost out of the 60 some cases was a curing case, right?
It was in 2020.
Yeah.
It affected no votes.
What?
It affected no votes.
It affected no votes. He wanted to get it, extended to 9 days
I think it was
6?
5 days, and instead it was extended to 3 days.
Oh, okay. So it probably yielded nothing. Would have
Nothing.
yielded nothing. Yeah.
0 votes.
So it was too bad that we had to lose that one, because otherwise you would have had 60 some and 0.
65 and 0. We'll be right back with more of my exclusive sit-down conversation with Senator Al Franken. But if you want to support Democracy Docket's work, please sign up now for their free newsletters, or even better, become a paid member now. The links are in the description below. So before we talk about presidential politics, I got to pick your brain as a senator. So I was reading earlier today that first of all, the Republican Party right now is, I don't know if you've followed this, but the Republican Party right now is putting out various polls. Like they're in like a war with themselves. So first their super PAC put out a bunch of polls that showed one results. Then the NRSC put out a different set of polls to say that the Republican super PAC was wrong. So the Republicans are all fighting among themselves about what the state of the races are. Okay. But I was reading an article earlier today, Al, in which Ted Cruz is apparently throwing a fit. Not apparently, he's doing this like publicly. He is accusing Mitch McConnell of not helping him in his Senate race.
Oh, because man, that's too bad.
So I'm trying to understand, in a fight between Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz, who are we to root for?
Wow, that is, let me see. I'd want the younger man to die because that would be more tragic. So I guess we're rooting for McConnell.
Okay, so
I wasn't called. We weren't talking about killing them. We were just who wins in this battle. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then in that case, we're not fighting to the death. I don't know. It's a tough one. I once said to Mitch McConnell, I said, because he'd given a speech at the we used to have this thing, and now it's the spouse club. Oh, the spouse club.
The congressional spouses. Yeah.
It was actually the wives thing, I think, at one time. So we had this, and he gave a really nice speech at the spouse dinner. So I went up to him on the floor and I said, that speech you gave last night, was really nice. He said, well, you can't go wrong, quoting Mike Mansfield. And I said, oh, okay. I said, I like your speeches that aren't in the service of evil more. And he said, I like the evil ones better.
No, he didn't.
He did. And I went like, Christ, that was funny. and I had never seen him say anything funny in my life until then. And then when he became majority leader later, and the press came to me and wanted to interview me about him, and I went to him and I said, can I tell that joke? And he said, well, sure. And then I talked to him about it, about how that he had made me laugh. And I realized that he hadn't meant it as funny. So he's just, he is as humorless as you can be.
Okay. But you wrote in your book that you said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think this is pretty close, I like Ted Cruz more than any of my colleagues, and I hate Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I like Ted Cruz more than I think most of my colleagues.
Okay.
But I hate Ted Cruz.
Right.
So, yes, that is true.
What is it about Ted Cruz that makes him such a loathable figure? Like, I mean, you'd think there are a lot of people that we could all loathe. Why is it that Ted Cruz seems to capture the imagination even before the Cancun stuff and the rest of it?
He just has no perspective on himself. The first time I met him was he won for the first time in, I guess, 16. Is that right?
Well, he's up now, so that would have been 18.
18. Well, then he might have won.
Right, he's up in 24, so he's up in 12.
Maybe he won in 12 the first
12,
time.
He won the first time in 12. Yes, he won the first time in 12. Then he ran for president in 16.
So he ran in 12 and won, and that was when Sandy Hook happened. And so I didn't see him until he was sworn in, till the 3rd of January. But he comes up to me, doesn't introduce himself, and just comes up to me and says, anybody who's for the assault weapons ban is engaged in sophistry. And I said, why am I engaged in sophistry? Instead of what he wanted me to say, which was, what's sophistry? Well, I said, okay, how am I engaged in sophistry? And he said, Clinton's own report, his own White House report or Justice Department report says that the assault weapons ban didn't work. And I said, no, it didn't. It said that it looked like it worked, but there wasn't enough data to draw a conclusive conclusion. And he got mad. He goes, yeah, you just look at the report. So I go back to my office and go to my legal counsel. And I said, Ted Cruz just said that anybody who's for the assault weapons ban is engaged in sophistry. He goes, well, why do you say that? I didn't tell him. He goes like, no, the report says that actually it did look like it worked. I went, I know. Get the report and Xerox it for me and circle the part that is the part, and I'll carry it on me, and next time I see him, I'll go up to him. So I see him the next day. He's on the floor, and I got this report, and I go, oh, Ted Cruz. And he sees me coming, and I go, remember yesterday you said that anybody who says that everybody who's for the assault weapons ban is engaged in sophistry? And he said, no, I didn't.
What?
That's Ted Cruz. It's amazing.
That is amazing. That is an amazing story. Let's hope he loses to Colin Allred.
Well, it's I think the reason Ted is panicked is that it's within one, I guess, is what I hear.
Yeah, that's the context of this story, is that he is apparently upset that he is potentially going to lose his Senate race to Colin Allred because it's virtually tied, and he doesn't feel like McConnell's doing anything. And I think McConnell is sitting there being like, well, yeah, no shit, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, well, I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't. I don't know. It's going to be close. It's so hard to believe. We get stung by. It's hard to believe that something that great could possibly happen. You know, you don't want to wish for it too hard.
So 3 weeks out from the election, everyone's like on the Democratic side is like panicked and like, how can this be so close? What can we do? You have been an astute observer of politics. What do you think's going on? Why is it so close? And why doesn't all of America see what we see?
I don't know. It's unbelievable. I wrote down some stuff. This is I got this from the New York Times, and it says every falsehood and untruth in Trump's and Harris's stump speeches, and said in over an hour and 3 minutes, Mr. Trump made 64 statements that were false, inaccurate, or lacking context. Now so it's like one a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I got some of these. Okay, here's one. I hope I've organized myself well enough to warrant doing this. But okay, here's one. She's a Marxist, communist, fascist person, which is she's a fascist. Who the hell ever thought we'd be voting for a communist for president? She is. Look at her record. Kamala supports states being able to take minor children and perform sex change operations on them without their parents' consent.
Okay. Could I just ask you a question about the first one? Do you think he knows the difference between communists and fascists, and that they,
that's a very good question. I don't think he does, but come on, don't we not? I mean, really? He was president of the United States, and you'd think he'd know the difference between a Marxist, a fascist, and a communist. Anyway, I don't know. Then he's got one. This is about Minnesota. So I like this one. It's about Tim Walz. He even signed a law that allows abortion in the 9th month. He says abortion in the 9th month and babies to be executed after birth. And that's right. And it's happened numerous times in the states and other states too. There are radical left states that allow that. Nobody wants to talk about it, but they allow that. Execution after birth. And this is one that he repeats all the time. So, and do you ever watch? I doubt you have time to watch a good chunk of one of his speeches.
I don't. The thing is, I drop in and out of some of the clips, and I was going to ask you actually, as just from a pure technical, like, performer level, like, whether you find him, like, you understand why it is that people find him entertaining. Because honestly, I watch it and I hear him talk about fictitious serial killers, something about electric boats and sharks.
Oh, I know that one.
And how he is the smartest person ever because his uncle went to MIT, which, by the way, by that standard, it sounds like your brother went to MIT. So what does that make?
That's a closer relationship. No, yeah, it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing when you watch him speak, and it's entertaining at a level because it's so crazy. That's all I can think of. But and I know that there are people that go to his speeches who don't take everything for literally.
Right.
But I think there are a lot of people who do.
Yeah. And look, I think that the media has made a mistake in telling us to not take him literally. But, to sort of take the gist of him or take, his ideas.
Don't take him literally, take him seriously.
Right.
But I think you should take him seriously and literally.
Yeah. Because, I mean, look, we wound up with a violent insurrection on January 6th. Like, as you say, some people took him very literally and they stormed the Capitol.
Right. And that is the ultimate disqualifier, I love that J.D. Vance wouldn't acknowledge that he had lost the election. He couldn't. He would have been off the ticket or something, I guess. But in the Walz debate.
Yeah, it's the one thing that Republicans can't do. Like, think about it. You could think of a Republican right now. You and I could brainstorm almost every issue and find a heterodox Republican. We could come up with a Republican who is in favor of free trade, even though Donald Trump wants tariffs.
Right.
We could come up with a Republican who is saying that they're pro-choice. We could come up with Susan Collins says she's pro-choice. Maybe she is. We could come up with a Republican who wants to limit gun assault weapons. You and I couldn't come up with a single Republican who's willing to say publicly that Donald Trump lost the election.
Well, yes, you can. I mean,
who?
Romney.
Fair enough. A Republican who is in good standing.
Good stead. Yeah. No, not who's in good standing. And that's what's so crazy about it, because look, if he wins, they will all fall in line. No one will dare contradict him on anything. Right?
Absolutely. And,
and it's a nightmare. I mean, it's a nightmare.
It is. And I'm just curious, we skipped over the fact that for a period of time, you were also the nation's most listened to and popular progressive talk show host.
Yeah, that was Air America. That was between Lies and Lying Liars and my run. So I'm just curious, like, how do we get out of this box?
Let's say best case, he loses the election and Kamala Harris becomes president by a pretty sizable margin, and we have a Democratic House and the Democrats keep narrow control of the Senate. I still don't think, I don't know if you know Sarah Longwell, but she's
I do.
I had her on the podcast, and she said basically, you understand, Mark, the Republican base isn't looking to go back to the Romneys and the McCains.
Right.
Like, so how do we get out of this?
I don't know. I mean, that's what the poison of their media is. And it's not just Fox, and it's not just these radio guys. It's also these podcasts and these, online. I mean, I don't know that It's Bannon. I mean, Bannon has a YouTube channel or whatever it is, a podcast YouTube channel. And I mean, he's worse than Fox. And you know, it's violent.
He has said that Trump is a MAGA moderate. He thinks that the movement is much further out than the grassroots of the movement is further out than Trump is.
Well, he probably knows.
Yeah,
and so it's very now I don't know if that pertains to the members of Congress, but it does to some of them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at, you know, one of the statistics I always give people is you had Mike Johnson, when he was a backbenching Republican, led a amicus brief in the post-election
to the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court got 126 House Republicans to sign on to a brief to throw out the election results in 4 states. On the night of January 6th, they got 139 votes. They actually gained 13 votes as a result of the insurrection.
On the night of January 6th.
Yeah.
So in other words, they had just witnessed this insurrection.
Yes.
And they still voted. Oh boy.
More of them voted, not just still. More. Some of them voted and they're like, wait, I wasn't on this before, but now I'm with you.
Because boy, look how passionate our people are.
Yeah. What is, in your view, the answer to the question that that I know you get asked and others get asked, which is, do Republican politicians believe what they like? Do they know that they are lying? Do they know he's crazy and they're lying? Or do they?
Well, I remember I was in the Senate when he was elected, right?
Right.
And I was there the next day. We were all in shock, including the Republicans. And there were a number of Republicans who were not terribly happy. You know, they were maybe equally surprised and unhappy, but there were some who just could not believe it, that this guy was going to be our president. And you know, he whittled away at them. It was Jeff Flake and and Corker, and that was kind of it, and then Romney. But other than that, he can't get, you know, Mitch McConnell shows up when, you know, Trump comes to the Senate. He shows up to be there, and you know, he said that there's no doubt that he started this thing, that he started the insurrection. And you know, we'll have to, you know, there's ways to deal with him in criminal court, you know. And then I guess the Supreme Court hadn't heard about that.
Yeah. What about Lindsey Graham? What do you make of him? He was a McCain guy, and now he's like a total Trumper.
Yeah, he hated Trump, and then he wants to be relevant. I don't think he makes many bones about it. That's it.
All right,
he's a fun guy, but boy, oh boy,
is he? Does he have a sense of humor?
He has a really good sense of humor.
Really?
Yeah. He let me see. What are some of his? I remember we were going for winter break, and he said, "You plan to go somewhere for your, you know, to get some sun with your family?" I go, "Yeah, we're going to Vieques in Puerto Rico." And he goes like, "Do 2 fundraisers, one for the people who are pro statehood, one for the people anti statehood. They never talk to each other."
Is there anyone in the Senate who is particularly funny that you would not think is funny?
Wait a minute. Anybody who thinks he's
funny? Are there any senators
who
is actually very funny that you like publicly would not like seeing them? You would not know that they are funny.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'll put it this way. There are some people that are less funny than other people. Tom Coburn was, you remember Tom?
Didn't he bring a snowball to the floor?
No, that was, oh, shoot. That was the other guy from Oklahoma. Inhofe. Is that?
Inhofe, right. Yeah. Inhofe,
yeah. He brought us, because it was proof that global warming wasn't happening.
Right.
Because it snowed. And so I went up to him, and this shows you not a sense of humor they have. I said, "Hey, can I go and get a snowball and have you stand on the floor, and I'll be on the floor, and I'll say, like, you know, my colleague from Oklahoma, Senator Inhofe, says that just because there's snow, there isn't global warming. Well, take this, and then I'll throw it at you, and we'll tell C-SPAN to wait, and then you just take another snowball and put it in your eye. And he went, no.
Okay, but in the remaining minutes,
Okay, let me tell you about Coburn.
Go ahead. Yeah, Coburn.
Okay, so Coburn was kind of he had no sense of humor, and so we just hit it off badly at first. And I said, Tom, can I take you to lunch? And he goes, take me to breakfast. So we go to breakfast the next day. And I said, look, we sit down. I said, let's have some fun for the next 40, 45 minutes. You know, we talk about our jobs before we went into politics. You were a doctor, right? And he said, I was an obstetrician gynecologist. I said, uh-huh. To be a doctor in Oklahoma, do you have to have any formal training? And he went, yes, you've got to go to medical school. And I said, okay, that was a joke. And then I explained what jokes were.
All right. In the last few minutes we have, I got to turn to the Supreme Court. I got to turn to the Supreme Court, because one of the things that people may not know about you is, though you're not a lawyer, you asked some of what I thought were the most probing and intelligent questions of various judicial nominees, including on the Supreme Court. There is one exchange in particular that I thought, like it was something surreal, and it was Justice Gorsuch, who had ruled on a case in which a trucker had essentially almost frozen to death in his truck.
Right.
And you were probing whether or not, in then Judge Gorsuch's opinion, he should have stayed and frozen in the truck.
That was more or less what it was. I mean, that he said they had a right to fire him because he didn't. And what he did was the trailer. This was a truck carrying a trailer, and the trailers, it was so cold out that the brakes had frozen.
Right.
And so if he took it out on the interstate, he couldn't go very fast at all, and he could get in an accident because someone driving on the interstate at 3 a.m. going 90 miles an hour could come up and hit him in the back. He could kill a family. He could do it. So what he did was they said you could either take the vehicle out on the road or you have to stay there. And so what he did was he unlatched the load, and he went in his truck, the cab of his truck, which had no heat in it, and he found a place to warm up. He warmed up and then drove back, and they fired him. And I said, how the hell did you come up with that's okay? Because it was a three-judge decision,
right?
And he was the only one dissenting, I think. Yes, and he said something on the rule of law. And and I said, what is that? And it was something to do with, if it's the rule of law, you have to go on the rule of law. And I said, there's an exception to the rule of law, which is if it doesn't make any sense. And that is an exception.
Yeah.
So I had him. So I didn't like him.
But it has always stuck with me, that exchange, that as we now look at the court and we look at some of the irrational decisions that they've made, the Trump immunity decision, that we referenced.
Oh my God, yes.
That in some ways, that to me that exchange speaks volumes to kind of why we have what we have. In other words, it's not just that they are, I think we sometimes think that, or the media portrays it as, they are corrupt and they, take gifts, and don't believe me, I don't think they should be taking any of those gifts. Okay. but there's something more fundamentally wrong with their point of view that they think, you know what I mean? Like that leads them to those kinds of results.
I remember at that in that hearing, Lindsey Graham said, "What would you have done when when you met Trump for the first time and the president for the first time, if he had asked you to overturn Roe? What would you have done?" And Gorsuch said, "I would have stood up and walked out of that room. No judge does that on that side of Pennsylvania Avenue or on this side of Pennsylvania Avenue." And I'm kicking myself to this day because Lindsey went in front of me. I should have just said to him, "Okay, you're lying because this was your chance to be a Supreme Court justice. Couldn't you have just said, well, let me answer it this way. Look at who sent me." And that's all I had to do to show how clearly apparent it was that he and Lindsey had this little thing worked out. And I really didn't like Gorsuch.
Yeah. All right. So we have just 3 weeks till the election. What's your advice to people?
What's my advice? My advice is for everybody who's listening to this, do something to get people in battleground states to vote. If you know somebody, if you live near a battleground state, go door knock, or especially if you're in one. That's all you can do. You're poking holes in potatoes, really, is that as long, as you got some time, if you have some time and you got goddamn better vote yourself. But if you can do something to get people out to vote, that's something you need to do. I mean, it's going to be who gets the most votes, I guess. And you're going to be making sure you're going to be in court, I know, making sure they're counted correctly. And that's going to be really, really hard. What do you, I mean, you're going to be, what fights are you going to have after this?
We'll see. I mean, look, the reality of it is that, we talk about your recount. And we talk about it because there were hundreds of votes between the two candidates. We talk about Florida in 2000, and you were talking about hundreds or a couple of thousand votes.
537 votes in Florida.
Yeah. What Donald Trump did in 2020 was to set a standard that he's never been held accountable to, which is that, rather than asking the question about finding 11,000 votes or whatever, what the hell was he doing contesting an election where the 11,000 vote margin or a 50,000 vote margin or 100,000 vote margin? I mean, these were historically large gaps. And by the way, it wasn't just one state. For him to win, he would have had to flip several of those states. And so what do I expect in 2024? I mean, I expect that abnormality will continue. I think that Donald Trump, I have asked every reporter who I've spoken to in the last month, if they ever have a chance to ask Donald Trump a question, ask him this. What state in 2020 do you admit you lost? Okay, don't tell me what you didn't lose. Tell me what state you lost fair and square. And I think the answer he would give today is he didn't lose any state fair and square, because he's already said he won Minnesota. He's already said he won New Jersey. He has suggested he won California, right? And so I think...
Okay, if he says he won California, then he's won every state.
Correct, right? So
right.
You say, what will the post-election this time look like? That's what it'll look like. It'll look like, no matter what the margins are. That
would have been a good line of questioning for Walz to do with Vance after he said, did he lose
what state
the election?
Did he lose?
What state did he lose?
Yeah.
Because he says he won California. Oh my God. Yeah. Let's just, everybody vote, everybody do everything you can, but holy mackerel, we better win this.
Yeah. Al Franken, thank you so much for being here. You are a great friend. You are an unbelievable, great guy. I mean, people.
So are you, and you're very funny.
People know that you're very funny. People know you're wicked smart, and you are an inspiration to millions, but you are also just an absolute mensch. You're a great guy.
Well, that's a very, very high compliment. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Defending Democracy. Make sure you're subscribed to Democracy Docket's free daily and weekly newsletters to get the latest voting rights and democracy news. Defending Democracy is a production of Democracy Docket, LLC.